Fighter jets blast across Taiwan as the military begins restructuring its air force.
As Taiwan's population begins to shrink, one presidential candidate is championing a contentious fix.
80 years on, a controversial wartime declaration continues to impact Taiwan's sovereignty. And cultures combine at Taiwan's first Design Week exhibition. Good evening and welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Leslie Liao with 30 minutes of the latest. Thanks for joining us. Taiwan's military is getting ready to convert one of its Air Force training centers into a fully operational airbase, one that will house the country's most advanced fighter jets. Jaime Okan has more.
Taiwan's fighter jets roar above the country. The military is welcoming these trainers to this base in the southern city of Kaohsiung and converting the airfield into a training facility for future pilots. Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen says the move is partly motivated by the changing security environment around the country.
因应接装新式高教机的任务，更能够整合飞行教学能量。国际地缘政治的复杂多变，因此我们的飞行部的责任可以说是任重道远。
Taiwan has seen an increase in military pressure from China, which seeks to take the country. That's why the military here is restructuring its air force, investing more in fighter jets and reallocating them to different bases. The aim is to be better prepared for a potential conflict, but the Air Force's revamp didn't start here. In 2016, Taiwan decided to upgrade 140 of its F-16A and B variants to the newer F-16V, which is the most advanced version of the F-16 with new radar and weapon systems. And in 2019, it bought an additional 66 F-16Vs.
主要是 F-16，它算是一个目前一个很先进的战机。那台湾操作已经超过30年了，它具有很好的这个 ELSA 雷达，它甚至可以 detect， 就是可以侦测到一些无人机，所以对台湾的防空作战是非常有价值的。
Taiwan's Air Force currently deploys the F-16 from Hualien on the east coast and from its base in Jiayi in the southwest. And President Tsai says the Taidong Air Force Base will be upgraded from a training wing into a fully operational fighter base. The F-16s will be a powerful tool for the Air Force as it manages the security around Taiwan's airspace. But since those planes aren't scheduled to be delivered until 2026, the military is expected to keep looking for ways to accommodate its new weapons and adapt to the growing threat it faces across the Taiwan Strait. Chris Ma and Jaime Okan for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's military has held exercises testing the vulnerability of one of its beaches. 3 amphibious assault vehicles practiced storming Shizuan Beach in the southern city of Kaohsiung on Thursday. It's part of efforts to secure Taiwan's 14 so-called red beaches across the country. These are areas considered easier for China to invade from. As Taiwan faces a declining population, one of the country's presidential candidates is pinning his hopes on an innovative solution that's dividing opinion. Stash Butler reports.
Every year, fewer babies are born in Taiwan. The country's birth rate is now among the lowest in the world. It's the start of a demographic crisis that threatens to slash the population by a third in 2 generations. Now, with a pivotal election looming, Taiwan's third-party candidate for president has made the issue central to his campaign, with a contentious solution: surrogacy.
既然台湾已经少子化了，对不对？有人愿意生，就应该把那个限制拿掉。这是我很简单的想法。
As the January vote approaches, former doctor Ko Wen-je and his 4-year-old Taiwan People's Party want to allow surrogates to carry children for people who can't do so themselves. Surrogacy is not currently mentioned in Taiwan's reproductive law. It's not expressly illegal, but it's not legal either. As public opinion has shifted in favor of surrogacy, the government says it plans to redraft the law, but no presidential candidate has made it an election issue as vocally as Ko.
And
that has won prominent supporters to his cause. Once aligned with President Tsai Ing-wen and the ruling Democratic Progressive Party, Janice Chen has pushed for surrogacy for 28 years. She was born without a womb and ended up adopting. Now, she's running as a lawmaker under Ko. Chen believes helping people who are infertile to have children is a clear fix for Taiwan's birth rate problem.
但是对于这一群，就说他不怕养，他不能自己生，但是他很想养小孩，才会一直诉求嘛。我就说所谓的 CP 值最高啊，你为什么不帮忙他？
But not everyone is convinced that surrogacy is the answer to the fertility crisis, with women's rights groups calling it an exploitative practice.
经济有钱的人他才有办法付100-200万嘛，没钱的人来拿这个100-200万嘛。那这里变成经济弱势、最经济优势的人用最低的成本在服务，为什么没有钱的人要用利他的方式，用最低的薪资、最低的这个 payment 帮有钱的人工作？
But Ko says his plan would protect against that. And though surrogacy is not a guaranteed solution to Taiwan's birth rate woes, this dark horse candidate is speaking about it publicly, hoping that will catapult him to the presidency. John Su and Stash Butler in New Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
China has been sponsoring visits for hundreds of Taiwanese. That's according to an exclusive report by news agency Reuters. Security agencies here are looking into more than 400 trips to China in the past month that could have broken election laws. Prosecutors say that Chinese officials use trips like this to persuade attendees to vote for opposition candidates. A group that backs opposition political parties in Taiwan, called the Union of Chinese Nationalists, is already under investigation. Its head has denied any wrongdoing.
你要用选举罢免法来起诉我吗？你那证据不足啊！我又没有特地的要去针对哪个候选人或者哪个政党去支持，做这样子的表态。
Taiwan is working to keep relations with India on track after public opposition to a plan to welcome Indian migrant workers to the country. Louise Watt reports from Taiwan's legislature.
Should Taiwan allow in migrant workers from India? That's become a hot topic as Taipei prepares to sign an MOU with New Delhi to pave the way for just that. Taiwan already has more than 700,000 migrant workers. They come mostly from Indonesia, Vietnam and the Philippines. They take care of the ill and disabled and work in factories. And there's an urgent need for such low-wage labour. But opposition to the introduction of Indian migrant workers has grown. That's after online rumours that said Taiwan could allow in 100,000 migrant workers, which Taiwan's foreign ministry says sparked racist comments and bears the hallmark of Chinese cognitive warfare. A legislator from the ruling party organised this event in the Legislative Yuan to explain to Taiwanese why it's important to Taiwan to have migrant workers from India.
在2025年，台湾65岁以上的人口比例会高达20%。那我们没有人口红利了，那我们需要更多的朋友来帮助我们。那印度其实我们也很清楚，印度的劳工的这些能力非常好。
The quota for Indian workers can't be discussed till the MOU is signed, which should happen before the end of 2023. Bringing in migrant workers is seen as a way for Taipei and Delhi to get closer. A big help to Taiwan as it's pressured and isolated by China internationally. Justin Wu and Louise Watt at the Legislative Yuan for TaiwanPlus.
Pharmacists in Taiwan are calling on the government to address antibiotic shortages in clinics around the country.
小朋友6岁以下没有退烧糖浆可以喝耶，那对疾病的控制，那未来是不是要出了人命，要用人命来换政策？
One legislator met with local pharmacists to address the problem. Taiwan's health ministry set up the Drug Supply Notification Center earlier this year to fix drug shortages, but critics say it hasn't solved the supply issue. Pharmacists say clinics have to exchange medicines to meet demand. Business owners in Taiwan that violate fire safety regulations may face higher fines and longer prison sentences. The draft bill increases punishments for businesses that don't have proper fire safety plans. It will also force companies to assign staff to help firefighters in emergencies. The amendments come after a factory fire in September killed 10 people, including 4 firefighters. December 1st marks the 80th anniversary of the Cairo Declaration, the product of a 5-day summit during World War II that some say helped determine Taiwan's fate. But even today, the statement's significance remains a controversial topic in Taiwan. Jeremy Olivier explains.
In late November 1943, at the height of the Second World War, the leaders of 3 Allied powers met in the Egyptian capital of Cairo. The topic of their discussion? The fight in the Pacific against Imperial Japan and the establishment of a post-war order in Asia. It was one of many summits between U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt and British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, but was the first and only one to include then Chinese leader Chiang Kai-shek. At that time, Chiang's Republic of China was still considered a relatively weak power. To sit alongside the world's 2 most powerful heads of state was a big step up for him.
It marks a real turning point in China's international position. The China of Chiang Kai-shek, the China of the Kuomintang, of the Nationalist Party, was essentially being treated as a full-scale war ally, not as a semi-colonial state. So it was an important moment for China to attend this conference.
The key figure behind Chiang's presence there was Roosevelt. He believed that the ROC armed forces could help tie up Japan's troops in China, allowing the U.S. to devote more resources to its war effort in Europe. Roosevelt urged Chiang to keep up the fight against Japan and supported Chiang's goal of making Taiwan, then under Japanese control, a part of the ROC after the war. At the end of the meeting in Egypt, the 3 leaders produced a statement that was broadcast to the world on December 1st, 1943. It declared that Japan, once defeated, would be forced to return all the territories it had taken from China, including Taiwan, then known in the West as Formosa. To this day, historians still disagree on the significance of the Cairo Declaration to Taiwan's international status. For some, it was cut and dried.
各位熟知的1945年后期发生的这个斯大林、罗斯福跟丘吉尔他们开的这个国际会议里面，对开罗宣言并没有反对，甚至于接受开罗宣言的看法，来执行后来台湾归还中国的一个想法跟主张。
Others have questioned the declaration's legal basis, saying it was no more than a press statement put out by leaders during wartime.
The Cairo Declaration itself is very important, but it's just one stage of the war. At that time, it's just an intention rather than an actualized fact.
Critics also say the declaration violated the self-determination of the Taiwanese people, since none of them were asked whether they wanted to be put under Chinese control. But some argue there was excitement in Taiwan about ending a half-century of Japanese colonial rule. It was only later, after Chiang's government began repressing the local population, that many started turning against it. Yet another interpretation of the Cairo Declaration comes from the Chinese Communist Party. Beijing says the statement gives it sovereignty over Taiwan because it overthrew the ROC as China's governing force at the end of the Chinese Civil War. It's part of what Beijing calls its historical claims to Taiwan, which it has vowed to take by force if necessary.
台湾回归中国是二战后国际秩序的组成部分。开罗宣言白纸黑字写着，波茨坦公告清清楚楚印着。
But throughout the years, even after it became a democracy, Taiwan's position has not changed, that the Cairo Declaration gives the ROC sole sovereignty over Taiwan. 8 decades after its announcement, what the Cairo Declaration meant for Taiwan is still a hotly debated issue, but what's clear is that its place in history is important, and its content has continued to influence international relations in Asia in the years since. Devin Tsai, Klein Wang, Sam Hui, Ed Moon, and Jeremy Olivier for TaiwanPlus.
Coming up, Healing Through Art. An exhibition in Taipei hopes to destigmatize one of the world's most feared diseases.
Standing Strong, every Thursday, 10 a.m. on TaiwanPlus.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. It's World HIV AIDS Day. To mark the occasion, one Taiwanese group is putting on an exhibition showcasing the daily realities HIV-positive people face. Tiffany Wong takes a look.
An art exhibition in Taipei about the daily realities of living with HIV. Called Pause Movement, short for HIV positive, the show aims to help people living with the disease reclaim their bodies. This piece is Pause Bath, a private performance in which the artist, Zheng Zhiwei, who is HIV positive, washes a stranger who is also living with HIV. It's an intimate experience meant to help them heal.
They often think they're dirty. Yeah, and me, for example, I've been living with HIV for almost 8 years. And in the beginning, for like 3-4 years, I couldn't let others to touch me. You know, I thought I was dangerous. But inside, you know, I wanted to be touched. I wanted to be caressed. I wanted to be loved.
Though not curable, HIV is treatable and can be controlled with medication, so it becomes undetectable and untransmittable through sex. Official estimates say there are some 35,000 people living with HIV in Taiwan, with 80% now treated to have undetectable viral levels. This art exhibit's curator says he hopes Pause Movement will be an inclusive experience for all people living with HIV.
For HIV AIDS, we often see the resource for, let's say, LGBTQ plus member or gay members, and you rarely to see there's an organization or there's a place for female only, but they are HIV positive females there. But it's really difficult for them to find the resource just for them.
The exhibit itself is a resource of sorts, showing how some HIV-positive artists are healing themselves through their work. And the artists hope in turn to help other HIV-positive individuals find a community, learn to accept themselves, and live their lives courageously. Kama Xu and Tiffany Wong for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan has been making significant progress in reducing new cases of HIV in the country. To find out more about HIV in Taiwan, our reporter Rick Lauert spoke to Dr. Stefan Ku of HIV Education and Research Taiwan.
Taiwan is set to have less than 1,000 new HIV cases this year. That's the lowest in 20 years. Could you tell us how Taiwan has achieved this goal?
I think the CDC and also the community and also people in the public health sectors have been working really hard using different strategies. For example, we're encouraging people to take tests to know your status by encouraging using self-HIV tests, for example, and also innovative strategy like mobile testing. And also we are encouraging people who are living with HIV to take medications early as possible to remain undetectable status. So they're not going to pass HIV to others. And also we are having a PrEP strategy, like a CDC-funded PrEP. So more than 5,500 people in Taiwan are now receiving CDC-funded PrEP. So it's kind of amazing.
So testing and medicine like PrEP is helping to bring down those numbers. But could you tell us what challenges Taiwan still faces?
We are still seeing stigma and discrimination in the society and also in institutions. So we're always fighting against stigma brought by the disease. We know that the presidential election is coming, and a lot of time people living with HIV are brought to the front line because of political issues. So we're hoping that, we are seeing HIV, we're doing pretty good and have a successful combat against HIV in Taiwan. We don't want to see these being brought back again.
And we know that Taiwan has been hoping to achieve the United Nations goals for HIV without actually being part of organizations like the WHO or UNAIDS. How does not being part of these big organizations affect Taiwan as it tackles big diseases like HIV?
So for NGOs, there will be more like localized, but instead of being more international. As a nationwide, I think we don't really see our data in those official reports from WHO or UNAIDS because Taiwan has never been part of the official entities. We do believe that we have a lot of good experience, and also we have set many good examples for bringing down the epidemic in our region. So we definitely would love to share our outcomes and our results with our neighboring country, but so far there was no such officially international platform for us.
That was Stefan Koo of HIV Education and Research Taiwan speaking to our reporter Rick Lauert. Fighting has resumed in Gaza after a week-long truce between Israel and Hamas. Gaza's health ministry says at least 32 Palestinians have since died in Israeli strikes. Efforts to extend the ceasefire failed, with Israel accusing Hamas of breaking the truce by firing rockets at Israel. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu pledged to release the hostages and eliminate Hamas. During the break in fighting, Hamas had exchanged 105 hostages for the release of 240 Palestinian prisoners held in Israel. UN member states have reached a landmark deal to fund countries that are most affected by climate disasters. The Loss and Damage Fund was agreed on Thursday at the COP28 summit in Dubai. Sally Ensign takes a look.
A standing ovation after a long struggle to reach a landmark deal. Wealthy countries have finally pledged financing for poorer nations at the UN's annual climate summit.
This sends a positive signal of momentum to the world and to our work here.
Agreed on just the first day of the two-week COP28 summit, it's hoped the Loss and Damage Fund will help ease tensions between wealthy and developing nations. As the impacts of climate change, like floods and droughts, are felt hardest by people least responsible for the emissions that cause them. The decision to create the fund was made last year at COP27. This year in Dubai, host country UAE and Germany both pledged $100 million each, almost half of the total initial funding of nearly $429 million. This is just a fraction of the nearly $300 billion climate disasters are expected to cost developing nations per year by 2030. Many experts and activists are skeptical that the fund will raise anything close to that amount, or how long the pledges will last.
I think it doesn't solve all the questions regarding the sustainability of sources of finance in particular. And there's a lot of questions as well on who will be eligible to the fund and how do we sustain finance to keep flowing to it.
Activists say COP28 must also take aim at fossil fuel companies. That's after the summit was rocked by allegations that its president was planning to use the conference to broker oil deals for the UAE.
We have to ensure that we have a fossil fuel phase out in the final outcome of the text, and we need states to sign on the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty, and we need to ensure that loss and damage finance comes through in the form of grants and not loans, and we have concrete actionable goals for adaptation and drastically reduce carbon dioxide emissions.
And now, as even wealthy countries feel the rising costs brought on by extreme weather and climate disasters, questions remain whether the Loss and Damage Fund can truly keep up. Dolphine Chen and Sally Jensen for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan is holding its first Design Week in Taipei. The event is held around the world and aims to showcase distinctive local designs. Yu Jing Huang has more.
30 seconds of songs from Mexico, paired with these themes. They're showcasing Mexican designs with Taiwan in mind. These installations are a part of Taiwan's first Design Week. The expo is held in cities around the world to highlight the works of local designers. And it's also an opportunity for exchanges between host countries and global designers. This time, 5 countries answered Taiwan's open call.
我觉得很重要的应该是说，台湾的设计力在国际上能够被看见，而不只是一直在对内做出一个输出。
More than 50 teams are showcasing local designs, such as these mechanical flowers, inspired by a type of flower that only grows in the extreme climes of Nanhu Mountain on Taiwan's east coast. It's seen as a symbol of the country's resilience. Materials frequently used here in Taiwan are also on display, including some that can't be found in other parts of the world. The east of Taiwan is rich in this mineral, serpentine, and it's often used to make vintage-style furniture. And most of these works are made by teams of fewer than 9 people.
在小编制的团队里面，每一个 founder 都可以贯彻自己的 spirit、自己的意念，然后做出很多不一样的，除了自己的核心的业务以外，做非常多 crossover， 然后做很多实验性的尝试。
Countries can only become members of World Design Weeks after they've held their own design week for 3 years in a row. As this is Taiwan's first year, organizers hope they can keep up the momentum to officially join the international design community. Devon Tsai and Eugene Huang for TaiwanPlus.
That just about does it for this edition of TaiwanPlus News. Thank you for watching. Don't forget, you can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, take a look at Taiwan's tallest Christmas tree lighting up in central Taiwan's Lishan. I'm Leslie Liao, signing off. Take care, and I'll see you next time.